Hello friends, you all are welcome to our Yojana series, and today we are going to study Yojana of July 2021, and the theme of this Yojana is Northeast. So in this discussion we are going to cover the 8 most important topics of this Yojana. The first topic is governance in Northeast region. So in this topic we are going to study about Mizoram in great details. Then we will see the status of agriculture in Northeast region. Then in the third topic we are going to study about the various opportunities and the challenges that the youth of Northeast region are facing. Then in topic 4 we will see how there is prevailing peace is prevailing there, and because of this development is also there in this region. Then in topic 5 we are going to study about education policy, and the author in this topic is arguing for 3 interventions: globalization, then leadership, and then integration. So these 3 interventions are being argued for by the author. We will see this also. Then topic 6 is Nectar, strengthening science and tech in Northeast region. Nectar is Northeast Center for Technology, Application and Reach. So this is how we will see this topic also. This topic 7 is waste and climate change. So this topic is different, a bit away from Northeast region as such, but important topic. And of course this topic 8, bamboo is a very valuable resource for Northeast region, and Northeast has 60% of the bamboo resources of bamboo reserves of India. So this topic is important, so we will see that also. Now let us begin and see topic 1, governance in Northeast region. So an overview, we know that there are 8 states. The culture, custom, languages are diverse because so many ethnic tribes are there. So there is so much diversity, and of course the terrain is also difficult because it is hilly region, mountainous region, and because of this the connectivity is also limited. Then insurgency has been a problem there. As of now it is dormant and not very much active as per the author. Then we know that it is Northeast region is connected to the mainland by Siliguri corridor, that is also called Chicken's Neck, and that is strategically very important. Then the institutional support for this Northeast region is one dedicated ministry is there for development of Northeast region, which is handling Northeast Special Infrastructure Development Scheme. So there are various major projects that is being developed under this scheme. We will see those projects also. Then we have one Northeast Council, similar on the basis of zonal councils. Zonal councils have been there, constituted by one act. These are statutory bodies. So on that basis there is Northeast Council Act 1971, and that has established this Northeast Council, which is a statutory body and it is a regional planning body, and the governors and the CMs of all the states are the members, and it is chaired by Union Home Minister. So these are some factuals. Now let us see this Mizoram. So Mizoram, it is land of Mizo people, and Mizo, this term is an umbrella term. It is an umbrella term which covers various tribes and clans. In fact, before the advent of this British rule, the various Mizo tribes, they were living under sovereign chiefdoms. So they were divided into various chiefdoms, okay, and they were sovereign in themselves. After independence, it became a part of Assam, then it became Union Territory, and finally it became a full-fledged state of Union of India in 1987. So this is a brief history. Now let us see culture and religion. So there is 2 period for this culture and religion. One is before British and one is after British annexation, after the advent of the British. So before British it was primarily animistic tribe. Animistic tribes, that means animals and various forces of nature, various natural forces of nature, they are worshipped by the tribes. So primarily they were worshipper of the various forces of the nature, animals, rocks, mountains, hills. This is how. Farming and hunting, these were the economic activities. And see the folk songs, the theme of the folk songs, they were loved because this is personal matters. Then hunting because it was the economic issue, and then this is warrior because several chiefdoms were there, and when these chiefdoms were there, often they were at wars with each other, and that's why this war related theme can also be seen in the folk songs. Then the script was not retained. These are some important dances. Cherao, it is bamboo dance, very popular dance of Mizoram. Then we have Sarlam Kai. Sarlam Kai is also very important this dance of the region, and this is war dance. In fact, the warriors, the previous warriors, they flaunt their might while performing this dance. Then we have Shelam. Lam means dance. This Shelam is dance of joy. Then we have Phualam. This is dance of guests. It is called dance of guests, and it is a community dance. Okay, religious significance. It has various religious significance also. Then we have festivals: Paul Kut, Chapchar Kut, and Mim Kut. So Paul Kut is celebrated in the month of December after the harvesting of straw. Then we have this Chapchar Kut. It is celebrated in spring season. Okay, in spring season after clearing of the forests, and we know that jhum cultivation is prevalent in the northeast. So after clearing of the forest, they celebrate Chapchar Kut. And then Mimkut is also a harvest festival that is celebrated in the month of September, August, September, and after the harvest of maize crop. So this is how the various festivals. It is advisable that you should go to Google and see some features of these dances and these festivals, because these terms have appeared in the Yojana. So anytime UPSC can hunt for various questions here. Now see, after coming of British annexation, Christian missionaries invented script. They developed alphabets for Mizo, and that's why there is Mizo language as such prevailing in the region. 87% of the population is Christian. Traditions and the prevailing indigenous belief system has almost disappeared. Okay, 8% of the population is Buddhist. Largely they are Chakma tribe. Okay, Chakma tribe, these are refugees from Bangladesh and largely found along the India-Bangladesh border. Now let us see the this international border. So when we speak about international border, then the map of India, if you can remember, something like this. This is Tripura and this is Mizoram. So Mizoram, here we have Myanmar and here we have Bangladesh. So Mizoram is sandwiched between Bangladesh and Myanmar. So it acts as a land bridge between these two countries. And also through this Mizoram, we can access to Myanmar and other countries which come under ASEAN countries. Okay, that means Mizoram can act as gateway to Southeast Asia for India. So this is one very important aspect. Yes, of course, free movement regime is there with Myanmar within this kilometer on either side for 72 hours. So that is important for cross-border trade. Okay, and also for people to people connect. People to people connect is very much important aspect in international relation. Okay, for confidence building, for trust, development of trust between two countries, people of two countries. So this is important. Okay, now see minority and backward areas. So in this region, this Mizoram, in fact, there are 3 autonomous district councils. These autonomous district councils are constituted under the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution. See, there are 2 very important schedules, 5th schedule and 6th schedule. Though these are very lengthier, we will not be looking into those schedules as such, but it is advisable that you should read the important provisions of these 5th schedule and 6th schedule. So under 6th schedule, we have 3 autonomous district councils in Mizoram: Lai, Mara and Chakma. Okay, and see, in these autonomous district councils, governor of Mizoram has discretionary powers. For example, if any act is passed by legislature of Mizoram, then whether that act will be applicable in these autonomous district councils or not, it will be decided by governor by public notification. Okay, or even if this act applies to those regions, then with what modifications or specifications, this can be done by governor. Okay. Now let us see economy. So tertiary sector by volume 43%, industry by value 43%, by value 30%, and by value agriculture has 26% contribution. But even then the state is primarily agrarian state, although the contribution of agriculture in the gross state domestic product is 26%, but largely it is agrarian state. These are the important crops. Then we see that there is one mission, organic value chain development. So this mission, in fact, its aim is to develop organic value chain, okay, a value chain for organic products. And for this there is creation of FPOs, farmer producers organizations, and farmer producer companies. So these are there, okay. These will support the value chain, okay, value chain such as for inputs, seeds, then after this organic certification, then we can see that creation of facilities for collection, processing, branding. So this is how, so various things of this value chain, okay, is to be done by these institutions, FPOs and FPCs. So this should be kept in mind. Then we have NFSM, National Food Security Mission. So one focus is on oil seed, but in this case we are focusing on tree-borne oil seeds. Mustard is not a tree-borne. Mustard is an oil seed, but not tree-borne. But oil plantation, it is tree-borne oil seed. Then we have integrated farming system, that is also being focused. See, integrated farming system is a topic in itself, but I will give one illustration. What is integrated farming system? See, it is a pond, okay. Now it is a pond. Here we have goatry, okay, and here we have horticulture. Now what happens? This horticulture is there. So from here leaves, they are being used to feed goats, okay, and now these goats, the fecal matter of goats are being used to feed the fish of this pond. So in this pond there is fish, ducks can also be there, okay. So this is what integrated farming system, this is one illustration. Similarly, in case of horticulture, Mizoram has very huge potential because of favorable agroclimatic conditions. Tomato, dragon fruit, bird's eye chilies. See, GI tag is also there for bird's eye chilies. This should be kept in mind. Then this SEDP. This SEDP is a socio-economic development policy. Socio-economic development policy. It is one flagship program of the current ruling dispensation there. See, administrative policy, the present government is focusing on extensive use of ICT for effective governance. That means e-governance is being, and digital India is being emphasized upon. Then we have economic policy, that means self-sufficiency in agriculture, horticulture, in case of bamboo cultivation, rubber plantation. So these things are to be emphasized under this SEDP. Then social development policy is also there. Manpower development, that means human resource is to be developed, education to be given, social security to be given to the people. So this is one flagship program of the present government. Now let us see the strengths and the challenges, okay. So strength, best state in terms of forest cover. So forest cover, it's a strength of this state. Then we have third highest literacy rate, so literacy rate is very good, sex ratio is very much favorable. Then of course oil and natural gas reserves near Arakan Yoma. Arakan Yoma is a part of the Himalayan range, Purvanchal, this is how. So there oil and natural gas reserves can be found. Then this hydel power potential is there. Then we have solar potential also. We have a 14% bamboo stock of the country in Mizoram itself. Then of course community is also very vibrant. Why? Because classless society, egalitarianism is so much there. Why? Because it's a classless society, and a strong sense of community is found there. But challenges are there. It is landlocked, and because of being landlocked, connectivity is a challenge. There are two national highways only. One connects Mizoram to Assam and one connects to Tripura, and these are lifeline. Okay, lifeline of Mizoram. Recently there was one dispute between Assam and Mizoram, border dispute, and National Highway 306 has been in news. And of course the next challenge is high incidence of cancer, HIV, lifestyle is unhealthy. So these are the challenges. Potential. So one potential is in terms of agriculture, horticulture and the allied sector. But here we need to modernize the system. Scientific farming should be done. Then we should shift towards commercial farming. So this should be done. Then food processing industries, it is also having very huge potential. So, but for that purpose, infrastructure has to be developed. For example, cold storage should be there, link roads, market facilities should be there. So food processing industry has huge potential. Secondly, tourism sector has huge potential. Why? Because climate is, environment is clean, climate is very comfortable, greenery is there. Then we have these mountains, scenic beauty is there. So health resorts, because of this clean environment, health resorts can be developed, wellness centers can be developed. So health tourism can also be there. So this is how in case of tourism there is potential. Then yes, one important aspect, inner line permit. This is one restriction for non-tribals. So for non-tribals, inner line permit has to be taken, okay, to enter the Mizo region. Now see, when this permission has to be taken, it is a deterrence, okay, it creates some sort of barrier, okay, some sort of barrier in development of tourism sector. Then the third aspect is handloom and handicraft, for example bamboo. So Mizoram is so much rich in bamboo and bamboo crafts. From bamboo so many furniture can be built, many items of daily use can be built by bamboo. So this is one potential. Yes, now finally Kaladan multimodal transport project. So this is very important project. In fact, it runs from Haldia in West Bengal to Sitwe in Myanmar. So if we will see the map, okay, so here we have Haldia, then we have this Mizoram, okay, and from here we go to Sitwe port, okay, in Myanmar. So this is multimodal project, and it is very much important for security purpose, conveyance purpose and transportation. This is providing alternative source of connectivity, very much important, because when we see Siliguri corridor, so through this Siliguri corridor long distance has to be covered, but that distance will get shortened, okay, shortened by development of this Kaladan project, okay. Then we have this Indian side has been completed, but on Myanmar side we have political turmoil, we have seen in news in recent times. So this is how topic 1 comes to an end. Then we have agriculture and sustainable development. This is topic 2. Some important facts are there. So 35% area is plain area. So largely almost 65% area is not plain. It means it is hilly terrain or mountainous region. Assam has, of course, 84% area of Assam is plain area in the Brahmaputra valley. Net sown area is highest in Assam, lowest in Arunachal Pradesh. Cropping intensity is highest in Tripura. So these are some facts. See, nearly 30% of net sown area is under shifting cultivation. So a faulty, okay, a faulty land use, okay. This is how a faulty land use pattern we are facing. Annual rainfall is this much, 2000 millimeter. Nearly 10% of country's total precipitation is obtained in this region, northeast region. Soil is acidic. Why? Because there is heavy rainfall. So when there is heavy rainfall, then metals like calcium, magnesium, potassium, these are leached away. When they are leached away, then the concentration of hydrogen ion increases. It means acidity will increase. And of course it is rich in organic matter. Why? Because it is full of vegetation, so organic matter will be there. Yes, the society is agrarian, rural population is largely there. See, one important aspect is that consumption of fertilizer is low. So this is one very good thing. Okay, because it is not chemical driven by chemicals, rather it is eco-friendly. This is how we can say. 20% area is irrigated. Rice dominant farming in Sikkim, we have dominance of maize. So agriculture in northeast region is characterized by these factors. One is diverse and uneven land. So land is not very much plain. Largely it is mountainous. Okay, 65% is mountainous. Only 35% area is plain. Then we have rainfall which is high and variable. So rainfall, because we know that monsoon is known for its variability. Agriculture is rice dominant. This is what we have studied above also. Expansion of cultivable land is constrained by geophysical limitations, of course, because there are hills and mountains, so it cannot be extended. In case of Ganga Valley in northern Indian plains, what happens? Forests are cleared and the land is there available for cultivation, but this is not the case in northeast region. Why? Because there are mountains. Okay, geophysical limitations are there. Then crop, livestock, fish, silk, these are various types of combination of these things are there in the region. Yes, small and marginal farmers, they are higher than national average. So this should be kept in mind. Vulnerability is there because of floods. So Brahmaputra Valley it is known for floods. Assam is often facing this floods. We often see in news. Then there is submergence, droughts and rural poverty. See, droughts, don't get confused that droughts mean so there is no water available. In fact, Indian Meteorological Department, it says that if the deficiency in rainfall is greater than 25% of long-term average, if the deficiency is more than 25%, then it is a drought condition. Okay. Now see, self-sufficiency in rice and food grain. So as of now, the condition is that seed replacement is very less. That means same type of seed, the variety of seed is not getting improved. Okay. Then irrigation facility is inadequate, techniques are outdated, fertilizer use efficiency is low. So these are the problems as of now. So what approach can be used? Increase rate of replacement. That means new varieties of seeds should be developed. Okay. Then irrigation should be strengthened, it should be assured, made more effective. Then other types of various types of new methods of agriculture, such as system rice intensification, SRI, this can be used. So in case of SRI, what we do, we plant this paddy and rice cultivation. This is done in some different methods. Okay. Then we have soil health should be improved. This is what we have to do. Judicious use of soil nutrient, this is required as of now. These are some common points. This is not very specific to northeast region as such. Rather, in case of India, we largely face such things. Then we have extension mechanism, credit, crop insurance, marketing. These marketing, rural storage facilities, these should be provided to northeast region also. These are some common issues we face in case of agriculture in India. Then we have horticulture and livestock. This in northeast region, we see that cultivation of some important fruits like this kiwis, passion fruit, etc., they are getting cultivated on an organized basis. So it has started recently. So this is a good aspect. Food grains in valleys. In valleys, we grow food grains, and on slopes, horticulture is grown. Meat production is going up, and the drivers for this are two things. One is livestock base is good, so large population of livestock is there, and people's preference is also for meat. So they are also non-veg. They prefer non-veg. So these drivers are there for meat production. Milk production is also going up, but the productivity of buffalo is low. So this is one issue. Anyways, now let us see the policy perspectives. So the first thing is that we must energize the rural institutions. Rural institutions such as the traditional village panchayats, the field management committees, these are the rural institutions, community institutions. So this should be energized, their capacity building should be done, knowledge dissemination should be done to these institutions. Why? Because these institutions, they in fact build social capital. Okay, and when they have social capital, they are very valuable. Okay, and they will help in the local development, they will help in improving the local conditions, and local development will be triggered by these institutions. They have potential to become agents for knowledge dissemination. Now see, if any new method, for example SRI, method of rice cultivation, if this has to be disseminated to the rural people, so the most effective institutions will be the local institutions. That means the village panchayat, the field management committees, the local institutions will be more effective if we want to take this new method of cultivation to the rural population. So this is very important. And also, when these institutions are there, community based institutional collateral will be there for effective credit delivery. For example, self-help group, we often see that in case of self-help group, the people themselves act as collateral. Okay, the people themselves act as collateral. Why? Because these people, they have peer pressure to pay back the loan. So the institutions find it safer to deliver the credit through this institution, SHG. So similarly, village panchayats and other local institutions, if they are strengthened, then they will act as community based institutional collateral for these financial institutions. Okay, then R&D should be done. This is what we are studying about, the policy perspectives as per the author for developing agriculture in the region, northeast region. Yes, regional database for effective policy, because evidence based policy making can be done only when we have regional database. Okay, then the author is saying that vertical farming can also be considered, rice plus, that means going beyond rice, going beyond agriculture as such. So these things are being emphasized. Then we have a focus on flood escaping production system. For example, Bodo rice, it is one crop which can develop in flood prone regions also. So the author is saying that flood escaping production system, so that production system which can escape the flood like conditions. For example, this Bodo rice, okay, this should be promoted. Then of course there is low input agriculture, because we have seen that how there is low input of fertilizers. So this low input agriculture is there, it should be seen as an opportunity. So this is what the point of view of the author. Then agro processing sector should be pushed, okay, because it has high potential for cross border trade also. When the agro products will be processed, so they can find markets in cross border trade, and also because northeast is gateway to Southeast Asia, so they can have access to Southeast Asian markets also in times to come. Anyways, now let us see this topic 3, opportunities and challenges for youth. So the context of this opportunities and challenges for youth is this, that there is out migration. So the youth population of this region is out migrating. They are going to various parts of the country, and they have lack of skill. So in India, the formal skill 3.9% of the workforce is having formal skill. However, it is also very small, but even compared to that, northeast region has only 0.4%. So this is one very challenging issue. Now seeing this, the author is saying that short-term improvement training courses should be there. For example, in case of electrician, plumber, home interior dress designers. So these are some small trades where training can be given to these people, and formal skilling can be done. Similarly, skills related to a small scale industrial production, for example, use of biodegradable materials for making plates and glasses from natural fibers. So this can be done. So this is one opportunity where youths can be provided skill and promoted, okay, to engage in small scale industrial production. Then animal husbandry is another opportunity, because there is demand supply gap in milk production, and milk and meat, they are high in demand, so there is potential, and these youth can be deployed there. Then traditional fish growers, many of them have become entrepreneurs, so fish growing is also one important opportunity for the youth of this region. Similarly, we can see that industrialization, in case of industrialization also, various climatic conditions are there, socio-demographic structure is there, and this should be taken into account, okay, for industrialization of the region. For example, citrus fruits, okay, this can be one sector for industry. Citrus fruits such as packaged juices can be there. It is also a sort of industrialization. Then the other important opportunity is tourist attraction. We have seen in case of Mizoram also, there are various historical places, religious places, natural places are also there, cultural places. So various types of tourism can be done in the region, and some innovation can also be brought. For example, the author is saying that biodegradable packages can be done near picnic spots, and take away food stalls. Take away food stalls can be run, and where the biodegradable packaging is done. Okay, so this can be one aspect where we can explore the opportunity for the youths. Then multilingual tourist guide, because tourism, we want to promote tourism, and of course tourism potential is also there for tourism. So multilingual tourist guide who knows more than 2 languages, so this can be one opportunity for youths there. Then agro based and processing enterprises is, can be there. Yes, bamboo cane jute products, various crafts, various handicrafts made from bamboo can be used, okay, can be promoted for generating job opportunities for these youth people. Strawberry, horticulture, floriculture, these are various areas which can be done. For example, if we promote horticulture and floriculture, then it will create another areas of job creation. See, one good point, that wild water hyacinth stalks. The hyacinth is one type of water plant. So its stalk, it is abundant in wetlands, and this stalk, when dehydrated, it can be used to weave many things, okay, such as handlooms, bag, office folders, etc. What this is, office folders, bags, etc. it can be done. So this is one important aspect. Now let us see. So friends, now let us come to topic number 4, long-term peace and development. Yes, this is not fishes, rather it is files, office folders and files. Now let us see this topic 4, long-term peace and development. So the author in this case is saying that there is peace prevailing in the region, northeast region, and that's why there is development. And some examples have been cited out by the author, NagaEd and Wander Nagaland. These are 2 startups. NagaEd is in fact providing digitally enabled educational experiences to the students, teachers and institutions. This is very much important in the COVID-19 era. Then Wander Nagaland is a startup, and this is providing information about the various tourist places, okay, tourist places in Nagaland, and that's why it is supporting the growth of tourism. So this is another startup. So the author is saying that there is long-term peace in the region, and this is the driving force for flourishing of idea, and that's why the venture capital fund is coming in the region. So this is the thing. Now northeast region has potential to develop as self-sustaining economic unit, And for this, the SWOT analysis has been done by the author. Let us see this strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. So let us first see strength. There is so much repetition, so we'll go fast. Tourism attraction, of course, there is tourism attraction. Then ethnic tribal culture is there with unique customs and traditions. So village tourism, rural tourism, this can be developed. Then we have numerous tea estates. So tea is also grown in the region. Gender development index is also very much favorable. Then bamboo availability is there. 60% of the bamboo reserves of India is in northeast region. Then natural resources, limestone, hydropower potential is there. Climatic conditions are ideal. That's why horticulture is one very good sector for development. Then environment is safe, clean, pollution, and also the region can act as gateway to Southeast Asia. So northeast region can act as gateway to Southeast Asia. This is also important. Already we have seen above. Then weaknesses. So connectivity problem is there, hilly terrain, rugged terrain is there. Tourism infrastructure is very much limited. Scarcity of labor force is there. Floods, landslides in monsoon region. Yes, this one is important, that laws in the states. See, in northeast region, it is many times it is very difficult for non-tribals to acquire land in tribal region. Okay, so because of various customs, usage and various other rules, regulations, so land acquisition and transfer of land is not easier in northeast region. So this should be streamlined, okay, for promotion of PPP mode and for investor friendly environment. Then landlocked estates, these are, yes, opportunities. Handicraft industry is there. Bamboo handicraft is one example. Horticulture because of favorable agroclimatic conditions. Ginger, exotic fruits like kiwis, passion fruits can be grown. Then we have tourism sector which can be developed. Tourism zones can be developed. Okay, scope for value addition. This is important. See, one example. Raw materials like stone boulders and limestone, we export this to Myanmar, and Myanmar, after processing this, we re-import in India chips, and from limestone we re-import cement. Okay, so there is a scope for value addition. Instead of exporting raw materials, we can do value addition, okay, on our own. So this is one opportunity. Then threats are there, because when economic activity will be promoted, overuse of resources will be there if it is not made sustainable. Then we have commercialization of eco-sensitive zones will be there, depletion of resources. Yes, another threat is that if land banks and land availability is not provided, then it may impact the investment, private investment. Outward migration is another threat. We have seen how youths are out migrating. Regional connectivity concerns are there because connectivity problem is there. Yes, now one more important aspect is some big ticket infra. This should be kept in mind. In fact, Northeast Special Infrastructure Development Scheme, this is developing all these big ticket infra. 1500 km long Trans Arunachal Highway from Sesa to Naharkatia, this is one big ticket infrastructure development. Then Jirban Imphal Railway, this should be kept in mind. What's longest bridge at Dhubri to Fulbari. Okay, then we have 5 major bridges over Brahmaputra. So these big ticket infrastructure development should be kept in mind. The author is also suggesting that one Northeast implementing agency should be there, which should handle the funding of projects, monitoring of each project, and also coordinating with the state government and private sector. So this is one suggestion from, good suggestion rather, from the side of author. Then we have topic 5. In this topic 5, education policy intervention for the region. In this topic, the author is emphasizing on restructuring of courses and programs. So we will see that, but before coming to that point, let us see. North region should become a human capital hub, okay, but the issue is that education system in Northeast region, like in mainland India also, okay, so it is not unique to Northeast as such. So education system in Northeast region is focused on traditional subjects, granting degrees. They have no connection with the industries, with domain specific degrees. for gainful employment. So there is need to focus on life skills and value added training. Okay, and that's why the author is of the opinion that there should be restructuring of courses and programs, and we need to incorporate three dimensions: globalization, leadership, and integration. So these three things should be incorporated in the courses and programs. Now let us see one by one. Globalization, it means we should focus on new skills in demand, the new skills which are in demand in the economy in this globalized world, that should be focused. Okay, then investment in rural areas and disadvantaged communities should be done. See what author is saying, that interdisciplinary groups should be formed. So people from various disciplines should come together, and they should explore that how courses and workshops, training, etc. can be framed, okay, and can be added to the mainstream curriculum to globalize them. So these things should be mainstreamed. How it can be done? So these people who are from different disciplines coming together and deciding, exploring how this can be done. Okay, then one another emphasis that students should be trained. They should be trained to understand the larger economic context of the country, economic context of the global economy. The trends of global economy should be understood by the students. The demands of the markets. For example, currently the demand of the market largely is in artificial intelligence, big data, IoT. These are some emerging areas where demands are getting created. So the students should be trained to understand the trend of the global economy and the demands of the market. So this is one aspect. Then leadership. See, traditionally we focus on knowledge, contents, texts and theories, and of course these are very much important because it builds our foundation, it gives a good grip over the subject matter and develops our concepts and conceptual clarity developed. But the point is that there should be reorientation. The reorientation, that means along with this traditional focus, we should try to focus on developing leadership skill also, problem solving approach, okay, and intercultural understanding to work with various diverse sense of responsibility. These things should be incorporated in the mainstream curriculum. Okay, this is another point of view. A specific courses should be designed, motivation sessions with motivation sessions, and leadership development should be made a part of course itself. So this is how the second thing. Then integration. Now what this integration means, in fact even this National Economic Policy 2020, it also recommends that there should be interdisciplinary structure of programs. Let us try to understand this with example. Let us take example of political science student. These political science students should be able to learn computer science also. Now what will be the benefit of this political science plus computer science? That the student will be able to handle political campaign and social media management, because today we can see how social media is an important platform for political campaigning. Okay, similarly political science student, if studying statistics, can help in election result forecasting. So integrative thinking is the need of the hour, and that is being emphasized by the author, that integration should also be there. Okay, then another thing is the locational advantage. So in this case, locational advantage, the author is saying that Northeast region is closer to Southeast Asia. Okay, so the students of Northeast region should be trained and should be given education in the history culture of the Southeast Asia, and civilizational link should be established with the Southeast Asia. Okay, and our campuses should attract more integration exchanges, such as joint programs can be there, some workshops can be there where students from Northeast region and Southeast Asia can participate. So this is how locational advantage, these people, when they will understand Southeast Asia, people to people connect will be strengthened, then this northeast region can better act as a gateway to the Southeast Asia. Okay, so locational advantage, this is being emphasized. These things you can read on your own. Yes, one important concept is learning to be, concept of learning to be. So this is where the individual autonomy is being emphasized by even national education policy also, that a person, Mr. A, is studying political science, as we have seen above, should be able to study computer science also. Okay, so this is the essence of this topic, that flexibility should be there so that learners can choose their learning trajectory. So if the learner is a student of political science, so after some time, 1 year or 2 year of his course, he can define his own trajectory and go for computer science. So this is how this learning to be concept. Now friends, let us see topic number 6. This topic number 6 is NECTAR, strengthening science and tech in Northeast region. NECTAR, this is Northeast Center for Technology Application and Reach. So this NECTAR is an autonomous organization set up under Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. So this has the mandate that it will connect the people of Northeast to the benefits of technology. Okay, so in fact NECTAR is to provide technological solutions for the various public and social good in the region, in the Northeast region. So this is important mandate of NECTAR. We will see the role of NECTAR in case of bamboo sector, and also we will see how NECTAR and skill based training is being given by NECTAR. So let us first see NECTAR and bamboo. So previously the value addition in bamboo sector was 10% only, but NECTAR, with the help of NECTAR, value addition in bamboo sector is 70%, and in fact there is now wider range of bamboo products. For example, bamboo pulp based hygiene products is there, wood substitute, development of fire retardant, gasifier based on bamboo is there being used to develop electricity. Then we have bamboo based structure is there during relief and rehabilitation. Bamboo based structure is being provided, that is being used. Similarly, NECTAR has also helped in establishing the market presence of bamboo sector. E-marketing portal is there, and there is now reach to the markets of metro cities also. So this is how NECTAR has helped in bamboo sector, development of bamboo sector. In industrial application also, this bamboo is being used to develop high grade charcoal and activated carbon, which has its own use. For example, in case of absorbent of pollution and absorbent of excessive moisture, so various usages is there. Yes, one important technology, flute technology is there. This is also called culm cutting or stem setting technique. This technique is used for faster generation of bamboo, so this should be kept in mind. Then we have this NECTAR and skill based training. In fact, NECTAR is providing to the rural masses various types of skill upgradation. The programs are being run for the rural masses so that they can become self-sufficient and they have sustainable livelihood. Okay, so skill upgradation is being focused by NECTAR, such as in mat weaving, in case of use of natural dyes, processing of bamboo shoots, agarbatti stick, rolling, incensing, in beekeeping. So in various sectors skill is being provided by NECTAR. Similarly, technology outreach to students, Northeast students, is also one focus area of NECTAR, and two examples we can cite out. One example is that students are now being taught, being skilled that how to study the damage, okay, how to do the damage analysis of potato crops. So there is unseasonal rainfall, and because of this unseasonal rainfall, damage to the potato crops is there. So how to analyze that damage? So damage analysis. So one area is there. Then the Northeast students are also given exposure, okay, to use the remote sensing, the data of remote sensing, that is the satellite imagery data, how to use this data, okay, for analysis of crops. So this is also one exposure being given to the Northeast students. Then we have two different schemes These two different schemes are there, TOSS and BAS, that is being promoted by Nectar. Okay, so TOSS has its mandate that it will try to establish link with individuals and institutions, and it will try to give technology solutions, various sectors that require the technology solutions that will be provided through this scheme. Okay, then BAS is another scheme, and its aim is to promote PPP, okay, in areas of bamboo application. For example, it is trying to promote the SHGs, community groups, to undertake economic activities in bamboo products and do value addition there. So this is how. Then in case of internal security also, application is there. For example, 3D terrain model has been developed, digital maps developed, high resolution imagery, and these things can be used in counter insurgency. So this thing you should study. Then we can see that how GIS analysis of different categories of schools using this 3D terrain model has helped in finding out that which are the unserved areas, and based on this we are opening schools. So this is also one area where this Nectar is helping. Then in fixed wing micro UAV, use of this has been done, and 3D terrain model has been developed, and with the help of this digital surface model and 3D terrain model, land use data from UAV over Brahmaputra has been developed, and with the help of this what we can do, we can visualize the flood related disaster, and when we can visualize the flood related disaster, we can mitigate it also. So this is also one area where Nectar has its own significance, has its own contribution. Success stories of Nectar should be shared at Krishi Vigyan Kendra, NGOs, community centers, colleges, entrepreneurs, etc. So this should be done so that there is dissemination of knowledge. Now let us come to topic number 7, which is waste and climate change, and this topic is focusing on one specific dimension, that there is a relation between waste and climate change, and that relation is two-way relation. Okay, now let us see how waste is contributing to climate change. Okay, so we can see that there are various types of waste: municipal solid waste, then we have agricultural waste, biomedical waste. So many wastes are there, and these wastes at various stages of their life, they generate greenhouse gas emissions, and let us see some examples. For example, during waste collection, transportation has to be done, and for transportation energy is consumed. Similarly, waste incineration, so in furnace it is heated, waste is heated, so in that case also energy is consumed, and whenever energy is consumed, GHG will be released. Okay, then anaerobic decomposition of organic waste in landfill, that is releasing methane. Then similarly, composting and biological treatment of waste, nitrous oxide is released. Then we have uncontrolled burning, open waste burning is there. Then black carbon is also released. Okay, that also trap the heat, so black carbon. Then some important aspects are there. This is global warming potential. So this definition should be studied by you. This is one data that 70% of waste globally ends in open dumps and landfills. One important data, it should be kept in mind. Then leachate wastewater sludge seeps down and polluting groundwater and soil. So this is landfill, and from here seepage is done, leachate goes into groundwater and soil. So this groundwater pollution, soil pollution is there. So this too should be kept in mind. Now let us see the other dimension that climate change is having on waste, okay, on solid waste management. So climate change, in fact, because of climate change, there are extreme weather events. There is temperature fluctuation, there is intensification of rainfall pattern. So given this extremity of the climatic conditions, okay, because of this climate change, there is some impact on solid waste management. Now see, when climate change is there, so there is change in precipitation pattern. So either there can be heavy rainfall or there can be reduction in rainfall. So when there is heavy rainfall, then it leads to infrastructure damage, it disturbs the supply system. So the frequency and rate of wet decomposition is also impacted. Okay, so when heavy rainfall occurs, but when there is reduction in rainfall, then the water the availability of water is less, okay, and it is less for various processes of waste management. For example, when water is less, then in the rivers, because rivers has, if it has sufficient water flowing, then it carries the waste away, but if it has less water, then the waste will not get carried away, okay. So concentration of organic waste will increase in the streams. So this is how, if climate change is there, then precipitation pattern is changed, and because of this there is impact on solid waste management. So this is one. Similarly, if temperature pattern is changes, if temperature pattern it is getting changed, then what happens? There is high temperature, heat wave is there, so it increases the rate of degradation and decomposition of waste, and our infrastructure may not be enough to handle this fast rate of degradation and decomposition. Then again, in other cases, high temperature, when temperature is going up, then it may cause drying up of compostable waste. So compostable waste will get dried up, so it will not get decomposed, okay, because microbes will not sustain in such high temperature conditions. Worker safety is also impacted, maintenance cost may also go up. So these are various things. Then increase in sea level and storm surge, okay. So when there is increase in sea level and storm surge, so flooding is there, and because of flooding we can see how infrastructure may be impacted. So this is one another aspect where climate change has its impact on waste management. Then climate change and ETP, effluent treatment plants, effluent treatment plants. So temperature, when temperature is high, then in warmer conditions, conversion and removal processes, this gets affected, this treatment process gets enhanced. So this is one impact of climate change. Because of increased temperature, the processes gets enhanced up. Then we have rising sea level also. Because of rising sea level, the untreated wastewater from facility might get released and damage the ecosystem in the event of a flood. So if sea level goes up, then storm surges are also more intensified and flooding is even more, okay. Then precipitation is also there. Because of this precipitation, increased flow rate is there, impacting nitrogen removal process, higher nitrogen concentration. When there is lower precipitation, lower flow, increased capacity to dilute. In fact, what is being said is that when precipitation is higher, so it means that in the plant there will be more flow of this waste. So increased flow rate will be there, and this increased flow rate, it impacts the nitrogen removal, okay. So it means that there will be higher concentration of nitrogen, okay. And if lower precipitation is there, it means that the water availability of water is less. It means that the pollutant will not get diluted, so concentration of the pollutant will be high. So this should be kept in mind. Now what is the mitigation strategy? So integrated solid waste management is being focused. 4R: refuse, reduce, reuse and recycle. These 4R should be kept in mind, okay. This will decrease the demand, this will decrease the demand for transportation, this will lead to significant reduction in solid waste generation. So solid waste generation itself will get reduced if we focus on this 4R, okay. Then role of policy. So there is National Action Plan on Climate Change, and there are various components. Out of that, one component is National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, and it was in fact focusing on municipal solid waste management, okay. It was focusing on enhancing the resource recovery, recycling, reducing waste to be disposed in landfills. So it was maximizing reuse and recycle. So this National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, in fact it was focusing on recycling, reducing waste, reuse, recycle, these things. Then in 2015, one more mission was added to NAPCC, that was waste to energy conversion, okay. And then another dimension is this Swachh Bharat Mission. Swachh Bharat Mission, it is also focusing on improving status of solid waste management, cleanliness, hygienic behavior. So this is how this topic number 7 comes to an end. Now let us come to this topic number 8. This topic number 8 is rooting for resilient bamboo. Some factuals are there in this topic, that bamboo is one of the quickest growing plant. It can survive in varied climatic conditions. So these are features. And then uses, in fact we have seen many of the uses also, that it is used in construction, handicrafts. It is known as poor man's timber. So this should be kept in mind. These two important data, that Northeast has 60% of India's bamboo resources. India is second largest producer of bamboo. Challenges are there in the value chain. For example, market facility is not available, and that's why Nectar is there. Nectar is providing e-portal, okay, for marketing. So this is one. Then regulatory and legislative barriers are there for cultivation and harvesting, because of various laws relating to forest and conservation, etc. There are some problems, okay, in the growing of bamboo and cultivation of bamboo and cutting of bamboo. Then challenges in procurement is there. Then we have market demand is not there that much. So these are, and also technical know-how. So modern processes, modern technologies, even now it is not integrated, not provided to the people in the Northeast as desired. But there are demand drivers. Population is increasing, income growth is increasing, export potential is there, institutional credit is being given, so many schemes are there, okay. Then we have government initiatives also. So these initiatives should be kept in mind. These are very important. This is also very important, 4P1000 initiative, okay. So this 4P1000 initiative, this is of Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and here it is focusing on bamboo nomics. So this 4P1000 initiatives is also very important. What is this? Let me explain. It is in fact saying that 4 parts in 1000, that is almost 0.4%, okay. 0.4% of carbon that should be sequestrated in soil, okay, in soil, because the soil on the earth's surface, it in fact it carries a large amount of carbon, okay, in fact 2 to 3 times the carbon present in the atmosphere. So this, in this soil, the carbon that is released out of that, 0.4% should be taken back to this soil. So this is the aim of this 4P1000 initiative, and in that process bamboo is being used as a conduit, okay. So bamboo will be used. So this is one important thing. So this is how we come to an end of the discussion. Hope you have enjoyed this. Thank you.